Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Astro Imaging channel. Even though we're going to every other week, we have only 1 week for tonight, and Adam Block is going to be presenting a couple of really interesting projects, ideas on blending images. I think we all do that when we have a wide range of exposures and we have to figure out how to put those all together. He has a couple other things to present, and one of them is a complete surprise, so I'm not supposed to say anything about it, but please hang in there to the end so you can see that. And before we get to Adam, I'm just going to briefly go over our calendar. So I'll do my share the screen, share entire screen. So tonight we have Adam. Next week, again, only 1 week between programs, Ron Breacher about new masking tools. And then we have no show on the 31st because that's a holiday. And after that, on the 7th, we have John Hayes. So we really have, kind of the big three in presenters, Adam, Ron, and John. So please watch the schedule, make sure that you're there and watch these programs. After that, we're going to go into our 2 weeks. That is having 2 programs a month rather than one every week. And Ron Palmier. And we have some open times in November. So as always, if you have something you'd like to present or have an idea, just send us a little note from the contact sheet on the Astro Imaging channel. Someone will get back to you. I'm pretty sure we'll get you on the calendar. And I think that's all for the calendar. I'm going to stop sharing. And we are back. I see we have quite a number of people waiting for your presentation tonight, Adam. So I will turn it over to you.
Okay. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Yep, infinity. I know.
The good old infinity screen. We missed that.
Something not infinity. All right, let's come up here. And I will go to here. And I'll do this. All right, so just a few opening items. One is that there is always a non-zero chance that for some reason my computer crashes. Now, I rebooted my machine and I'll just come right back. So just give me a few minutes. If that should happen, I don't think it will, but who knows? This presentation, I very much appreciate you letting me come on, because this is the kind of stuff I'd really love to show and talk about. This one is about a particular element of PixInsight. There is a script that is created by Mike Cranfield. I hope he's out there watching. And it's a beautiful script. It's one that I think is personally beautiful because I actually asked him, please, can we have this? Can you please make this for me? And he did. And I find it, it's utilitarian. You can utilize it in so many different ways that I'd like to show off a number of them here tonight. And then you can take these ideas and many more to basically improve your images or to improve your experience with using PixInsight, because this provides, in some cases, just an easier way to do things, but in other cases, novel ways to process your images. So that's pretty much where I want to begin. Now, the image you see here on the screen is one that I generated with my own telescope. And that is a bit of news, because for my entire more than half of, I don't know, centuries worth of life, I've never really had my own telescope to take pictures with in terms of astrophotography. Yes, I used telescopes to do that, but they weren't mine. I couldn't do anything I wanted. With this telescope, I can do anything I want. And I took a picture of NGC 6302 here, and I'll tell you why that one is significant a little later when we show you some examples. So I just wanted to actually begin with giving you a little background on the telescope, because it's something that's a really big part of my life now. It is installed in Chile. So this is at OBSTEC. And the telescope I call the Harris telescope for reasons that I won't explain here, but maybe in a future episode, if you're interested in learning more about my experience in starting from scratch and, you know, kind of building up a system to put in another part of the world, I'd be happy to come on and give that talk as well. I did a lot of documentation. It took me a little over 2.5 years to complete this full cycle of, you know, starting from there and getting something in another world, in another country. So that's an idea. This is what it actually looks like. The telescope here, I sent it down in 2 parts. On the left, you can see the mount, which is a software bisque Taurus 700 equatorial mount, fork-armed mount. And then on the right, in the box there, is the, you know, the main OTA with all of the imaging train attached. So I just sent them 2 parts. That's part of what I did, is to set up everything locally, so it wasn't as difficult I had hoped to set everything up remotely when it got to where it needed to be. And you know, so they install the mount, the optics come down. This is what it looks like when you put the pieces together. Now, the image on the right is actually one of the first pictures I took at night, but the telescope at that point still isn't quite connected. I couldn't do anything with it. So it is kind of just like a monument there that I shipped, you know, a couple of tons of equipment down, but it didn't do anything. It's a nice picture, though. Later, I had the opportunity to do some stuff, and you can see the list of equipment there. So this is a 24-inch RC optical telescope. For those that remember the company, I am a big RC OS guy because I used it for my entire life through all the public programs that I ran. And so very familiar with the optics of that telescope. And then, you know, the new today's version of these CMOS cameras, I've got a little refractor, as well as the kind of, you know, instruments that you need, the focuser and the off-axis guider and all that kind of stuff. So this is June 24th. It was installed back, whatever I said, maybe I didn't say. Yeah, March. Installed in March, but I couldn't really take a picture of anything because it took a lot of setup and commissioning to get to the point where I was able to take a picture of something. So this is actually what I would call my first light image in June of just not that long ago, right? Of 2025. And then, so, okay, this is a picture I took through the telescope, and I utilized ImageBlend to take this picture as well as many of the others that I'll be showing you this evening. So let me go ahead and begin and show you some of those things. This is the script. Now I'm going to exit out of here just for a moment, and I promise I'll come right back in, because one of the first things that people will ask me is, you know, what's the repository for the script? And I'm going to answer in a different way. I'm going to say, please visit Mike Cranfield's site. It's called cosmicphotons.com. And under the scripts area, you'll see all of the scripts. This guy is prolific. Lots and lots of scripts. Really, really smart guy, amazing developer, and certainly super helpful when it comes to making the experience of using image processing, in particular in PixInsight, go very, very well. So one of the scripts here is, wherever it is, ImageBlend. Here it is. And that's the repository address. So now I'm going to come back here, and I will do from here. All right, and so what I'm going to do here is just give you a tour of the script itself. The way the script works is that you can take 2 views or images and load them in here. One of them is called the base image, and the other one is the blend image. You can see that I've expanded down below what I mean by blend. There are mathematical operations that you can do between images to have particular effects. And you'll recognize these. These are the, I mean, it's just mathematical, you know, algorithms, right? But these are the blending modes that you'll find in Photoshop. I mean, it's not exclusive to Photoshop, but most famously, you'll find them in Photoshop. So the blend image and the base image, the blend image is the one that, depending upon the blend mode that you use, kind of does the action. So you have this picture or these pixels in the blend image, and then you say, how do I want to incorporate them as a stacked image, if you will, as 2 images together, mixed with the base image. And that's what the blend image does with some of these options. The most powerful part of the script is the fact that you can adjust basically the histogram. So you can see there that this is just like in PixInsight, where you have histogram transformation. You'll see that you can adjust the black point, the midtones slider, and then of course the highlights, which is the white point. And you can do it on both of the images. And that matters. It matters because the blend modes, many of them are conditional. It depends on how bright a pixel is in one, in the base image compared to the blend image, that determines the result that you get. And so, although there have been more primitive versions of blending kind of things in in PixInsight, they didn't incorporate this ability to really, with some precision, adjust the images. And this allows you to do it. So that's super important. That's what makes the script as powerful as it is. Now, the blend modes themselves, as you can see, these are the ones that you'll find. There are a couple of extra, but the ones that you'll find in Photoshop, same idea. With the blend image itself, there are some additional options. You can have an opacity, which is something you would like, so that you can moderate the effect. There's also a filter section, and I'll describe a few of the filters that you can operate with using the blend image, which is fantastic. And then there's the display area, which is, it's just intuitive. With the display area, the way it works is that you can zoom in by drawing a box on any region, and it'll zoom into that region, and then you can double click and it'll zoom out. You can toggle the preview there by pressing the little check mark to turn it on and off so you can see the effect that you're making. You can also do it with some quick keystrokes. And then if you are operating on images that are linear, you may need to incorporate the screen transfer function so that you can see what you're doing. The images I'll be working with today are all permanently stretched, so we don't have to worry about that. And the most important button or part of the script is very tiny here, but it is the documentation. Mike did an excellent job explaining how the script works and how you can potentially take advantage of it in some really nice ways. So please check out the documentation as well. So the idea of the ImageBlend script and what you can do with it, I thought merited an entire course because I think it really does. So I've developed a new course about ImageBlend, just about that. And it is one of many new courses that I'm putting onto my new website. So it's a small announcement to say that I do have a new website. I worked very hard over the past, it's probably been 5 or 6 months now, to get this going. And it's completely different. It's much improved compared to my old one. And it's now much better structured, among other things. I'm now basing all of my work and content on courses. And the ImageBlend course is just one of many. You can see that here's a small sampling of the courses that are currently available, and I've circled over in the bottom right the ImageBlend Laboratory, which is the course all about what I'm going to be showing next. There's another course that's not here that's also a work in progress, and I'll mention it. It's called Deep Sky Academy, which I think is a way to think about how you would process images based on the kind of object that they are. And you'll see why that's important here in a moment when I demonstrate some of these ideas. Now I'm going to jump over to PixInsight and show you what I mean by manipulating some images. So with that in mind, you are always welcome to interrupt if you have any questions or anything like that from the, from people online. But let me just go ahead and begin, and then we'll see what happens. What I'd like to show you first is an image that looks like this. I'm going to use it as a kind of an instructional way to demonstrate how things operate with ImageBlend, but this is just a general lesson, in blending images, basically. I have an image that has A and B, and they have very particular values. We have a black value. We have a value here that is like 25% bright, if you will, so 0.25. In fact, if I put this here, you'll see it says 0.25. I have another value over here that says 0.75. And then I'm going to make a second image here. And this is my gray image, and it is 0.5. So we have 4 values, 0, 0.25, 0.5 over here, and then 0.75. And what I'd like to do is blend them. And if you know what those values are, it'll help you appreciate why things are operating the way that they are. I'm going to go ahead and now go into the script. The way that Mike has done the scripts these days is he has so many of them that you can find some of them still in the utilities area, if that's where you're used to finding them, like ImageBlend here. but you can also now find it under his own little section that he has named in the scripts area called Cosmic Photons. So once you grab his scripts, this is where you'll find them populating. And ImageBlend is the one that I want. So I open up ImageBlend here. I'm going to clear that. I'll use that later. So what I'm going to do is just load the images, and you can see what they are. We have A-B comparison in gray. So I'm going to load A-B comparison first. That's A-B here. And then we have gray here. So the first thing to understand when you use the script is that the default blending mode is kind of what you would expect, but it has a name. It's replace, and that's important to understand. So what we're doing here is we're saying we have our AB image, and then we have gray, and we are literally replacing every pixel in the AB image with gray, the blend image. That's what the replace does, the replace blending mode does. We don't have to do that, but that's what we're doing. In fact, if I change the opacity, you'll see that we'll let a little bit of the image come through that's underneath, right? That's exactly what you would expect. So we have that working properly. And what we can do is, of course, choose a different blending mode. The blending mode that I'm going to choose first is like the easiest one. And you should, in your mind's eye now, or in your head, before I actually press the button, I'm going to do Lighten. And what Lighten means is it looks at the values between the two images, the base image and the blend image, the two that you've loaded, and it will blend in such a way that the two images come together, and only the brightest values of whichever image, whichever the blend or base image it was in, will show up in this final blended result. So the brightest value, the maximum value. So given what I've described, we have a grayscale image here, a gray image of 0.5. What would we expect to see? The A was 0.75, the B was 0.25, and then we have black. So what are we going to see here on the screen when I do Lighten? That's the question. So I'll give you like 3 seconds to think about it. And here is the answer. We see the A, maybe I got it backwards. I don't know if I said it backwards. You see the A, because the A has 0.75, right? And that is brighter than gray. So that one shows up. But the gray value, which is 0.5, is brighter than black. And it's also brighter than the B value, which is 0.25. So we only see A and we see gray. So that's how the blending, the logic here works when you're using Lighten. Now, of course, we can use different blending modes. And there's another one, which is the kind of the opposite one, which is Darken. It takes whatever value is smallest between these two images, whichever is the lower value. And so, again, think in your mind, before I actually press the button, what will you see on the screen? This is a really good brain exercise if you haven't thought about it for a second. I mean, it's trivial to do, but you got to think about it. Right, so now I'll show you the answer and I'll explain why, because I think it's a little surprising if you haven't thought about it before. So when you do Darken, you're going to see both the A and the B. You see them both. Unlike a moment ago, we just saw one of the letters, right? So why are we seeing both here? Well, we're seeing black because black is obviously darker than any of the other grayscale values, right? So we're seeing the B because 0.25 is less than 0.5. So that makes sense. But then with the A value, why are we seeing A? But we're not seeing A as 0.75. What we're seeing here is A is 0.5, which is this gray right here. This gray value that we loaded as the blend image, that's why we're seeing it. In fact, if I turn on and off the preview, you can see how the A becomes brighter and dimmer. That's because I'm now doing it between 0.75 and 0.5. So that's kind of just a little bit of logic, so you can see the way in which you can blend images together. Of course, there are different functions here that do completely different things, but I wanted an opportunity to demonstrate that. Before I continue, are there any questions about anything that's popped up so far?
There's not anything about the content so far.
Okay.
But towards the end of the show, at some point, can you explain how the pricing structure for how one accesses all this information and how they can be part of what you do?
Oh, you mean on my site?
Yeah, on your site. Yeah.
I don't want to use up too much time on here and be too,
Right. I
never
understand.
want to be accused of that. So I will say that the answer is, if you go to my site, I have videos, the 2 videos that are right there on the main page. Watch those and I answer your question. It is literally on the first page of my site.
Thank you.
Yeah, that answers the question. Okay, next. And I think that this is one that, Eric in particular, but maybe others will find interesting. What I'd like to do is demonstrate how you can do, and I've done this before, many times before, but I think it's really a good one. You can do LRGB composition. This is something that's very popular. So you have a grayscale image of some galaxies in this case, right? And it's already stretched. So I've already stretched it in a way that is appropriate. And then we have a color image, which is also already stretched, but it may not be optimally stretched, to be perfectly honest. And to tell you the truth, what I did to stretch this image was I did a masked stretch. That is a process that is in PixInsight. And so we get a picture that's kind of faded, but one of the interesting things about LRGB is that the brightnesses of the color information, they don't need to be perfect or perfectly matched. In fact, you don't necessarily want that to be the case in order for it to play well and color well the luminance image. What I'm saying is you actually want the freedom to adjust in real time the color image and see how it blends with the luminance image. The problem, if I call this a problem, but the less flexible way of making an LRGB image is you come over here to LRGB combination, and you'll notice what this does not have. It doesn't have a real-time preview. You have to, in advance, correctly stretch those images so that when you blend them together, they look good. And if they don't, you close the LRGB combination, you go fiddle with the images again, you go put it in here again, and you iterate, right? Well, that iteration is much faster and easier if you use ImageBlend. So I'm going to come to here, ImageBlend. I will make sure that I'm always doing that. And so I need to load, it shouldn't matter which I do, but I'm going to load the luminance image, I guess, as the base image. So that is, what is this, NGC 51, whatever, moon. And then we have the color version here. Okay, so I'm blending these together with replace, which means that all I should be seeing here, if I zoom into this galaxy, I'll zoom in even more. It's a tiny galaxy. All I'm seeing here is the color image. If I turn it off, you can see the grayscale image, and this is the color image, right? And what I want to do is put them together like LRGB. So I need to blend with color. So I'm going to come down here and blend with color. And that's actually part of the game. I mean, that's it. I've now done an LRGB combination. This is synonymous with doing LRGB combination using PixInsight a moment ago. But now what you can do is something different. Because if you adjust the thresholding, this is the term that I use for changing the contrast of an image by manipulating generally the white point or the black point, maybe even the midtone. But by thresholding the image, you can change the way in which the image is colored by this blending operation that we're doing here. So for example, if you increase the black point a little bit, you'll see that the color comes in more. If you perhaps brighten with the midtones value, brighten that information up, then you'll get a different colored answer. And you can also take this may or may not help, but you can take the highlights in. And you can, not this, but you can, let's see, if I do, let me not adjust these. Let me just do it with the black point. So if I just go, here's no black point adjustment. And here, it's going to be subtle, but here is the black point adjustment. I don't know if this comes across on the screen, but this has a greater color saturation just by me adjusting the black point of the color image. And that is super, super powerful. So let me zoom out and I'll just show you the other galaxy really quickly. So we can come down here, show you the other galaxy, zoom in. It's not very bright, right? So another thing you can do is, if you wanted to, you can manipulate, goodness grief, both images, right? So if I wanted to make this a little brighter, I can do that, and I can do this. So I can manipulate the luminance image, as well as, of course, continuing to do whatever I think is best for the color image to make those colors start to stand out better. So it's the manipulation of these histograms that makes LRGB combination actually work in real time in a way that just simply isn't possible with LRGB combination. So I wanted to show that to you. And that's super, super useful. The next operation, I think, is the kind of the very most common use of ImageBlend. This is what people probably that have started to use it perhaps do with it. You know, you have a starless image, you have the image of some stars, whether they are from the image itself or from some other source. In this case, you know, I have RGB stars, and then I have a narrowband image of the this bug nebula. And you want to incorporate the two. Of course, you can use ImageBlend to do this. Now, I will very quickly add, because in case Mike is listening or wants to comment, there's another script called Screen Stars, and it better takes into account the fact that if you ever have stars that are embedded or within a very highly colored area, they're going to have that color bias. There's a way to extract the stars and put them back in, screen them in, unscreen them and screen them, that takes that color bias into account so the stars don't have that same bias. I'm not taking care to do that here. The very simplest way is just to screen and unscreen. And for images that don't have a very colorful background, that's no problem at all, like galaxies and things like that. Not really even a problem here. So let me show you how that works. We go back to script, ImageBlend. It's often important, I have found, because it's easy for me to make mistakes. I'll always just reset the tool so I know that I don't have some slider that might be in play. You can individually reset any of these items by hitting the little X here, but if I just hit the big reset, then everything goes back to 0. And in this case, we'll use our base image to be the starless image. So here's the starless one, and then we come to our stars. That's not it. If you load and this is a good thing, if you load an image that is a different geometry, it won't let you. It'll complain. So I have forgotten what the name of, oh, there it is. Nope. Yeah, there it is, stars. Yeah, so if you load an image that's not the same size, it will certainly complain, because how can it blend them? All right, so I have my stars here. I have the starless image, and we want to put them together. So we're going to put them together with screen. So that's another one of the blending modes here. It's pretty much that simple, especially if you've already taken care to make the starless image and the stars look reasonably good to begin with. Although I can show you that one of the operations that I often do is one that is it's a nice technique. Sometimes if you have stars, and a lot of them, you can use masked stretch to stretch the stars. But masked stretch does a pretty funny thing. Let me zoom in and show it to you. You can always tell when people use masked stretch or something, or a very, very aggressive stretch, because you'll see that the stars have these little cores to them, right? And then you see the halo around them. I think that looks ugly. I don't think that's right. I just think I mean, stars have a drop off, an exponential drop off in brightness as you look at these profiles, these PSFs. And that does not characterize that PSF. So what I like to do then is I will threshold the star's image in such a way by raising this, lowering the white point, that I can fill in the brightness of those stars. So I'm getting something that looks much, much more natural as far as the stars are concerned. Now, this might not be the final end all, but much more natural, so that at the end of the day, when I show you something that isn't zoomed in 300%, it looks right. rather than have those funny looking stars, all I have to do is just adjust the highlights, if you will, and just bring in those cores a little bit. Now, some people don't like it. That's fine, whatever. I think they're weird. But for me, that's the kind of star that I prefer. And this will be a theme because you're going to see more about that in just a moment. Let me pause again. I've now shown a couple of examples. Are there any questions? And they're on different topics. So are there any questions about anything so far?
I have one for you, Adam, and maybe you're going to get to this. But does the script respect masks so you can do the equivalent of layer masks?
I am going to get to that, and yes, it does. Yeah, it's cool. In fact, why don't we just do it? Let me just show you an example. I'll show you that right now.
Adam, there's
Oh.
some other questions in here.
Okay,
Trying to
now we have
figure 'em out. Scott made a comment that blend image seems to be useful for adding the luminance channel to an RGB image that's already processed, and that's where it seems to get its. That's where the image is used, or that's where the blend mode is used, or is it used in lots of other places also?
Yeah, so I'm demonstrating all the.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, and
so no, it's not just LRGB, but LRGB is contained as one of many ways to blend images together, one of many processing things you can do with ImageBlend, right?
okay, and I think that's the only questions. There's some other comments here, but let's get on with it. Okay,
Actually, there's a question here. Do you see that?
the one from
Is moving
Scott.
the sliders slowly to extreme values a good way to figure out what each slider does, or is there a better way?
Well, if we're talking about these sliders, these are identical to what you find in histogram transformation. They just adjust the brightness of the image. The other slider, like opacity, I think that one's pretty intuitive as well. So there isn't a slider here that does anything that you need to really figure out. They behave in a way that you expect, just like every other program, I guess.
And are they actually changing the image, or is there a final step which changes the image?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess I didn't spell that out. All of the changes you're making when we have some images loaded, let me just go ahead and load that AB image again. Whenever you make a change and you load something and do something to this image, it is all happening temporarily in memory, if you will. And then when you press the little check mark here, it actually outputs a new image to the desktop, which you'll see me do. I should have done it a moment ago, which you'll see me do in just a moment. So here, let me just do it. It only takes a second. So I had NGC 60 Starless here, and then I had the stars here, right? And then I manipulated my highlights in some nice way, and it was using screen. And then once I'm happy with everything that I've done, you just hit the check mark. So all of this stuff that we're doing here, it's all temporary. We can just see what the work that we're doing. And then you hit the button here, and you'll get an image that's called ImageBlend on your desktop right here. I'll close this now so you can see it. So this is the blended image. What is nice, this is an advanced thing, but when you create a blended image, you might want to just use it again in some different way. So you don't even need to exit the script. It'll show up in the list of new, views that are on your desktop, and you can just load that image since you've committed to it, and then operate in some different way. So sometimes there's some neat shortcuts to do that.
Adam, one more thing before you restart. I hope everyone on YouTube appreciates that we're now broadcasting at 1080p. So all those little numbers and letters that Adam is showing us, you should be able to read.
Okay.
Okay, now actually we've developed a couple of more questions.
Yeah.
John wants to know, can you blend two final images to get the best of both?
Well, what do you mean by that? So that what do you mean by the best? So
I don't know
answer is yes.
exactly. I was gonna.
The
This
answer
is
is
more
yes,
coloration, brightness, and things like that you're affecting. Not if like one of them has a streak going through it, you wouldn't be using this particular tool.
Sure, you would. Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You would use it in combination with a mask. That's
And are you using it with linear or stretch data?
you can do both.
Okay.
Now I'm going to be demonstrating stretch data because I actually do think it's easier to work with stretch data. But no, you can blend things mathematically with those blending modes, even with linear data. That's fine. There are some uses for that, but I think they're a little more advanced. Yeah. So the answer to the question is yes, absolutely. You can blend images to get the best of one image compared to the other. Typically, that's done with a mask, but you can imagine that there are conditional ways in which you might want to do that. Let me just give you an example. I'm not going to demonstrate this here, but if you change the contrast of an image, what happens? Certain things become darker and certain things become brighter, right? But maybe you're thinking, gosh, I don't like all the bright stuff that happened. I just like all the dark things that were going on. So what you do is you make two versions of your image. You make the original version and you make the image that has the better contrast, however, whatever tool you used. You put them into ImageBlend and then you blend them with Darken. And now you have a blended result that only has the contrast that happens that darkened the image. That's how you get to take advantage of something that is the better aspect of an image that you might want to, go forward with. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know. I was answering something else at the time. Sorry.
That's okay. So let me go ahead and show you the masking. I'm going to show you just a super simple example, but it is an important one because masking here, if you're used to Photoshop, this is going to seem a little bit different, but it actually does make a lot of sense. So I'm going to apply this mask, which is just half is white and half is black, right? So it's the simplest mask you can do. Whenever things are black, it means it's protecting. It's not going to happen, whatever it is. And whatever is white means things are happening there. That's where the blending, if you will be taking place. So I'm going to apply this to my image. It's now in mask form here on the image. I'm not showing the mask, but it's there. And then what we can do is we will go to Process, Script, let's see, here to ImageBlend again. I'm going to reset the script, make sure I'm doing this correctly. We will load AB, that's this AB image. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to load the gray image. It's just gray, but I have a mask now. So remember what the form of the mask looks like. We have white on the left and black on the right. What you need to know is that masks are applied to the blend image. Excuse me, I meant to say the whole thing. They're applied to the base image, not the blend image, all right? So the mask goes on the base image. The blend means the mask is telling you where the blending is going to happen. So the mask is actually controlling the blending operation, if you will. That's the way you want to think about it. The mask, again, is on the base image, this one. Okay, so now if I apply, let's see, if I load the gray image, which is here, and it's got replaces the blend mode already set up, that's what you get. So what you're going to see here is that the blend is taking place on the left. Why is it gray? Because the gray image is the blend image. So we're putting gray in our AB image only on the left and not on the right. And so if I exit out of here and I invert this like this, we can, oh, what did I do? Oh, wow, I didn't know it would do that. That was kind of cool. Yeah, it does that over there too. So you can come back into script and it'll just do the opposite. That's all I was going to demonstrate. And now we see the A and the gray is over here on the B side, if you will. So that's all you got to remember is you put the mask on the base image and then the blend will happen wherever things are gray or not black. Black just means no blending is going to be taking place there as far as the mask controls the blending operation. Okay, so you saw that. Now I'd like to show you a couple more examples. I'm almost there. I'm going to show you, let's see. Let me show you the other very popular thing that everyone wants to see. And I've demonstrated this one before, but this is, I think, a super powerful one. One of the ways to make that I think is easiest, and I've promoted this and I've said that I think this is easiest, I still believe it's true, is to, when you're doing narrowband imaging, if you want to make a narrowband image that is comprised of 3 colors, I think it's easy to make a 2-color image, like an HOO image, for example. That's what this is, of the Rosette Nebula. And then you can add a 3rd color easily with ImageBlend. And that's what I'd like to demonstrate. Now, I am not saying that the color mapping I'm going to do is what is required. That's not the point. The point is that if you wanted to make an SHO image, if you wanted that hydrogen alpha to be green, God bless you, whatever, right? You can use the method that I'm about to show. And I think it's an easier way to blend in that information. Now, I happen to not like green in my narrowband images, just the way I am. So I do like to put a little yellow for the 3rd band. So this is HOO here. And then I have the 3rd band, which is the S2 component. And it's still in its grayscale version form here. Now, I have stretched the image in such a way that it's not overly bright. And you gotta, and that's true of the HOO image as well, because if they're overly bright, once you start putting together 2 overly bright images, it's going to be even brighter. So that's kind of an important idea. It's almost always true for anything that we're blending together. You just can't make them too bright to begin with when you're putting more than one image together. And how you put these together is in the following way. We go back to ImageBlend. So here, always reset. I have HOO Rosette, and then I have the S2 Rosette here, right? So what we need to do is kind of 2 operations, actually. One operation is we need to colorize the S2 information to whatever color we want, and then we need to blend it. So one of the nice things is that one of the filters that you can use here is color, and it's spelled in the way that Mike likes for all of us people that have no longer speak that language. You can adjust the color to whatever hue you might want, and I'm going to keep the saturation very high at 1. So I might come over here and make it, you know, whatever. Some color. I'm trying to make it a little more yellow. Okay, there it is. Kind of some yellow color, right? And then the other thing to do is just screen it together. And now I've incorporated the S2 component in here. But that might not be all you want to do, right? Because remember, we can threshold both of these images. We can take out a little bit of the background of the HOO image if we want. Or, and this is where things get nice and interesting, is we can control how much of the S2 is incorporated here. Let's say that we didn't want S2, where because S2 overlaps the hydrogen alpha it's not 1-to-1, but it overlaps in a lot of regions here, right? So we're just kind of modifying the H alpha to go from a red, which I kind of liked, to now more of an orange, which is okay. But what I really want is I want the highlights of where the S2 is brightest. Those are the regions that I want to turn orange, not everywhere, right? And so if I instead threshold it by raising the black point here, you see, I can choose how much of that S2 comes in. And then if I want to, once I've chosen that, if I want to, now I can increase the highlights of the S2 and make it even stronger in those regions. And I can do that all by manipulating these sliders easily. And I have the feedback here to see exactly what's going on. So that's what I wanted to demonstrate. And it's super easy to do, to incorporate a 3rd color. I'm going to show you one more thing because I think it's important, but I'm not going to show you the total answer. This is just a hint, and you'll just need to go get some of my instructional videos. You see how I've made this new image here called ImageBlend, right? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset this, and I'm going to load that new image that I just made in the tool. So I have a copy of the image itself. This is a very important way to imagine working with images. Sometimes you're working two different images. Sometimes you're working on the image itself. And one of the interesting operations you can do here that often can be helpful. Now, it's not going to be helpful everywhere in the image. I'm just going to point out that sometimes you want darker colors. And what happens if I now take the two images and I multiply them together? Look at those colors. Come on, look at that. Those are fantastic colors. If I could figure out a way, of course, I know how, to incorporate those colors where it's too bright and then still have everything else bright, then I'll have the image that I want. And so there are many different ways, again, of taking advantage of ImageBlend to get you to where you want to be. Ways that are not easy to otherwise do currently in PixInsight. Okay. While I'm here, I'll go ahead and reset this. And let me just load another filter operation, or show you another filter operation, just so you can see this. This is another one of these things that I asked Mike to incorporate in here. I always felt it was important and missing from PixInsight, something that you could easily do in Photoshop. Well, now I can do it here. So let's zoom into this region right here. So this is another case where we're going to be operating on the image itself. So I'm going to load the same image again. So we have the base image and the blend image are the same. Sorry, I'll zoom in again here. And there's a nice sharpening operation that you can do here. One of the sharpening operations you can do is something called high pass with the overlay blending mode. So first we're going to just use high pass. Now you don't need to do it in these two steps. You could just go high pass and then just do the overlay, but I want to show you the guts. So when you show the high pass result, what you're seeing is kind of the structures at a particular scale size that's being controlled by this filter radius. So if we make the filter radius larger, you'll see larger structures. And if you make it smaller, you'll get smaller structures. And the way to think of this is anything that's kind of gray, not much happens in this image. So if you're just seeing gray in this high pass version, it's not going to affect the blend when we put it all together. But something that is darker will become darker in the blended result. And something that is lighter here on the screen will become lighter in the blended result. So it's really the scale that we're interested in. So you choose some appropriate scale. I'm just going to pick this scale. And then we blend with, and so this is a very particular technique. It's called the high pass with overlay blending technique. There we go. And then I can show you the before and the after. Do you see the nice kind of sharpening contrast enhancement? It's not an unsharp mask, but it's similar to an unsharp mask. Isn't that cool? All right. And then I have one final example that I'd like to show. And this is going to be exclusive content, if you will. Let me close this, delete this. But this is where things can go awry because I'm actually going to do some processing. Are you ready? Here goes. I recently had an opportunity to work on M22, beautiful globular star cluster. I took a very short exposure. It was just 16 minutes, 8 2-minute exposures in each of RGB. That's it. And what you're looking at here is the color corrected version of the image. But I haven't stretched the image with my tool here. This is unstretched with my screen transfer function. So what is it that we're actually seeing in this image? What you're seeing are the saturated stars. I took a 2-minute exposure, lots of stars are saturated, and I know that somewhere in the audience, there are people right now who have grasped their hair and are running out of the room because they feel it is offensive to some god if stars are saturated in their image. Oh my God. Okay, so I don't, because I can use the principles of image processing to take the data that I have in hand and work with it. And this allows for greater flexibility. You won't always be able to create pictures that don't have saturated stars, right? Or if you do, you're going to have a lot of very short exposures. So I think that this is a nice approach, particularly for clusters where the stars themselves are the object of interest. I mean, we got to make sure the stars look good or the image doesn't look good, because this is all about stars. In fact, any artifact or any choice or decision that you make when it comes to processing clusters is multiplied by as many stars are in the picture. And so it's very sensitive to whatever those choices are that you make. So what I'm going to demonstrate then is that this picture that you're looking at right here is a picture of the brightest stars, and they will be very useful. So I'm going to make a copy of the image like this. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the color saturation of what you see here. In fact, let me go ahead and give this a name. So this is going to be brightest stars. And again, I'm taking advantage of the fact that these stars that are saturated are the brightest stars. That's all we're seeing in this image, are the brightest stars. And it's the brightest ones that we need to take care of, or else they're going to look bad in the final result. That's why we're handling it in this way. So I'm going to first change the color saturation. But another nice trick that I've learned is that if you ever have an image that has two colors in it, this often happens like with HOO images, for example, the chroma adjustment here, instead of using just saturation, this can actually be pretty powerful. Not all the time, but in this case, having that darker color or maintaining those colors, those hues, can actually be nice. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that here. And I really boosted that color. And the centers of these stars look terrible. I mean, they have some weird color to them. It doesn't matter. It's really the halos of these stars that matter, because that's what we need to get right. And I'm going to now bring this brightest stars image into ImageBlend. I always reset. So I'm going to go to brightest stars, and I'm going to be operating on the image itself. So I go back to brightest stars. And let's just zoom in here. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend this image with itself, but a blurrier version of it, basically. So I'm going to use the filter here with the blur mode, or the blur filter. You can see it made a blurrier image, right? Now, how much you do, this is where your decision is going to matter. I think probably 3 pixels is good. If you make it too blurry, you just kind of lose the stars, right? And if you make it too small, it's not much of an effect. So probably somewhere around 3 pixels is about right. There we go. And having done that, I will now blend the original. Again, here's the original, here's the blurry. I blend them together with screen, and I get this. All right. So this, again, these are what now the brightest stars look like in the image. I haven't changed the stretch of the image at all. It's just the brightest stars, but I've made them look in a very particular way. So I'm going to output that. I'll go ahead and exit this so I can give it a nice name. So this will be brightest, and I'm going to call this enhanced. I'll set that here. I'll minimize this one. So I hope you're with me. We now have 2 images. We have a brightest enhanced, and then we have our original. So now we're going to actually, we need to brighten this image up as we would want to. And I'm going to go ahead and employ a mask stretch to do it. And as I look over here at my, at the things I need to do, one of the things I need to do is the blur exterminator. We do want on the image that we want to go forward here, we want to take advantage of blur exterminator. Who would not want to do that? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to make sure that I didn't already do it. Yeah, I didn't already do it. Okay. So let's go ahead and do it. You can see that I've turned off the, I better have here. Yeah, I turned off the, no, I didn't. I will turn it off. I turned off the non-sharpening, the non-stellar, sharpening of the non-stellar. So we don't want to do any sharpening there. We just want to do the stars. Sometimes if you keep that on, when you have crowded stars, it doesn't know the difference between the stars and the nebula, things like that. So we want to avoid that. And I'm not going too crazy with the sharpening of the stars. There we go. And now we'll do our masked stretch. And this will give us, you know, all the stars in the frame that we really care about. It's a pretty short exposure. This will take a second as well. The computer does need to work on this one. There we go. This is the most intense processing I need to do. And there you go. I think you'll agree that we have an awful lot of stars here, right? In some sense, this is what a lot of people do. They get this image and they publish this one. And I want to take this a step in a different direction, all right? So I agree that we're seeing a lot of those dim stars, and they do look pretty good, but all the bright ones, they have that look of the masked stretch, and I don't like that. So the first thing I'm going to do is, because I closed it, I have to go get it out again. Let me get curves transformation. I'm going to apply a similar color boost. And then we're now going to go and use ImageBlend to our advantage. I'm going to load this image of M22 with our brightest enhanced thing. So we go to ImageBlend. I will clear this because I do not want to mess it up. I have our, let's do M22 as the base image. We don't matter here, but then I'm going to do the brightest enhanced. These are the stars that we made the first time out of the saturated ones, right? And let's zoom in a little bit so you can see what's going on. And then what we do is something kind of magical. We use screen, and we put these two images together. And when you put those two images together, this is the result that you get. Oh, maybe I should zoom in more, sorry. And I'm going to argue that those stars, they look pretty good to me. I think they look pretty good. So I'm going to output this. Now, if I wanted to, I could continue to manipulate the stars here in ImageBlend, or I can manipulate them a little bit just outside of ImageBlend out here. And one of the things that I had to do, if you really brighten up this image, you'll see that the background is quite blue. And that's because I took this during, there was bright moon in the sky. This is all commissioning stuff. So at the end of the day, I tried to remove some of that bias in blue. So the end result that I got was actually this version of the image. But I think that that is a pretty good version. And I kind of increased the contrast so the stars look a little more substantial. Here, if you just leave it in this form, wherever it is, sorry. Where's the image? This one. If you leave it in this form, these stars are a little bit soft. So you can increase, the white point here to help, right? You can always do that. And the other thing that you'll probably want to do is you can see that there's a lot of noise there. So I did certainly run Noise Exterminator on this image, and I got rid of a lot of the noise. Might as well show you that. There it is. So then you take out a little bit of that sky, and that's what it looked like here. But I ended up somewhere a little bit different here, but it gives you the same idea. So now I will pause again. This is an important pause. That's pretty much what I wanted to show you when it comes to ImageBlend. There is one final thing that I'd like to show. Are there any questions out there so far?
I was so concentrating on watching it, I forgot to read the questions.
I tell you what, while you're reading them,
there's a few suggestions from people as to what they are commenting on the work and what they do and things like that. But I don't think there's any what I would call questions of what you're doing.
Okay, so let me go ahead and just show a few examples. These are some recent images that I've taken and utilized ImageBlend in particular. So these are the most recent images. I do have a refractor attached to the telescope. So these are the nice clouds in Lupus, which is just kind of cool. I will mention one thing. I'm going to put this out there for all the astrophotographers to think about. When you take a picture of dust in our own galaxy, and then you take a picture of another galaxy, and it has dust in it because there are dust lanes. The color between those two images, do you think that the dust changes color when you take a picture of the dust in the galaxy compared to the dust that we see here within our own? I don't. I'm just putting that out there. All right, let me continue and show you a few other things. So here is a beautiful picture of a galaxy. I used ImageBlend because I was able to better blend basically the stars here within this image. So not a big deal. Same thing is true here for this beautiful galaxy. It has this wonderful shell, like tidal tail shell thing going on. What was interesting about this image is that I didn't use 3 colors. So this is an HOO image, but I actually blended in the S2 as an additional red component. It wasn't strictly entirely red, but it was basically red. So that helped to maintain the color going all the way into the center of the nebula. That's the hard part. If you look at other people's images, you'll often find, in many cases, because it is difficult to do, to show the color going all the way into very bright objects. And there are ways to manage that. And ImageBlend can help you do that when you put the 2 images together. And I hinted at some ways in which that's done. Here's another beautiful, this one's a 3-color image, narrowband image. This one is actually one that I'm pretty proud of. I think this is cool. This is a neat object. This is a NGC 6337. It's another narrowband object, and those are HOO stars. Those aren't even RGB stars. But I think that together, just showing the background nebulosity, the red, and then you have this nice kind of greenish, blue-green glow in there. It's a really wonderful, wonderful object. This one is more difficult to understand. It is a complex nebula, really is. And I have not seen any like HSO type versions of this image. This is what it looks like with 3 colors. There are some images of this, but they're generally only 2-color images. It is a bizarre object, a nice planetary nebula. Probably the one that I'm most pleased with is this, and I definitely used ImageBlend to handle not only the galaxies, but this is an example where the bright star is just super critically important. Because if you don't get that star right, nothing about this image will work. And so that's super, super important. You know, these galaxies they're more than 500 million light years away. So very, very cool to be able to capture these in that form. And finally, I'd like to show you something completely different, but it is related. It's related in the sense that when we look at this image that we made of, well, maybe I'll show you my final result. The image here of M22, what we're actually looking at is a snapshot of what's going on here. So there's more than, what we're seeing is beautiful, but when you add in other elements, the physics of what's going on, it can take on even a greater kind of compelling nature. So what I'd like to show you is something that I did last night. And in and of itself, the fact that I did what I'm about to show you last night is super impressive. But before I show you that, because I'm going to totally leave PixInsight, before I leave it, are there any questions before I leave it?
There was one up above about can you use these kind of methods to combine H-alpha with RGB?
Yep. Yeah, easily, very easily. And the way there are several ways of doing it, but one way to do it is you just bring in your RGB image. You could bring in your grayscale version of H-alpha. And then, as I just showed, you can colorize the H-alpha, whatever color you want, whatever version of red you'd like. And then using screen, you can bring it in. Now, there might be some other ways you might want to do it. You might want to not just incorporate the straight HA, but instead, if you're working with a galaxy, for example, you might want to incorporate the continuum subtracted HA. But there are some other sophisticated ways of blending it as well. That's the brute force method, if you will, just screening it in. But you can now, in ImageBlend, colorize it and screen it all in one easy session.
I think that's all we got for the moment.
Okay, so I'm going to end the hour here with something completely different. When I was in college, I was in a computational physics course, and one of the assignments was to basically write a little bit of code, because that's what the course was about. And you had to write a program. I wrote it in C at the time. Python didn't exist. That would show the gravitational orbits of two stars. Two stars is the simplest case. It makes nice elliptical orbits around each other. Really super simple. In fact, it's so simple that you don't, I think, get the full understanding of how gravity works. Once you make an n-body code, when you generalize it to many bodies, not just two, then you can really get a feel for not only the math, but actually the physics of how it kind of works. And so that was important to me. And I spent, I don't know, a couple of months kind of putting together this. And because it's hard, you got all the syntax, you got to figure out pointers and arrays and the physics and doing the integration right, differentiating everything correctly. But eventually I did, and I made it. And I'm not going to show you my animation that I made now, because what you can do today, what took me 2 months to do then or more, many months, you can actually do in about 5 minutes now. ChatGPT 5, version 5 was just released. And you can basically tell it, I'd like this, this, and this, and it'll help you code it up. Now, you need to be smart enough to understand that what you're getting back is actually what you want or what is supposed to be. Because just because it gives you an answer doesn't mean it's the right answer. But you can do it with enough clever knowledge. So let me show you what I did, and I got to think about this for a second. I used ChatGPT to make this. So it has controls over here, and I'll show you the controls in a moment. But this is just a whole bunch of stars. And the cool thing is, it takes care of everything, right? So it's rendering this in 3 dimensions. You can move it around and all that kind of stuff. But then we can literally tell it to go. And so what I programmed, more than 30 years ago, was a calculation which calculates the force between each star and every other star. And then you do that, and that's one iteration, depending on how many stars you have. And then you do it again and again and again and again, changing the positions. And then, of course, it's the best thing to do is to output, it on the screen in some graphical way so you can see the orbits of stars. And so that's what I can now show you. What I'm going to show you is the analog of what those stars in M22 are actually doing. I think it's important because we now live in an era that we can do this, but not only this, but we live in an area of the Rubin Observatory, which is going to add the temporal, the changing elements of our universe. Now, it won't be able to do this easily, maybe of certain things, but there are many elements of astronomy that you will be able to see change on timescales that we otherwise didn't have access to. And so I think this is an example of that. Even just to create a universe now in a couple of minutes where you can see that kind of interaction, you can really feel how things work. So if I run the program, I started off all of my stars with no velocity. So they all just fall in on themselves. And then they are orbiting each other. It takes care of the distances. So graphically, it's showing, stars are close, stars are far, all that kind of stuff. It's just amazing. But I put in some extra goodies in here, which include, you can put in a range of masses. You can put in the initial dimensions of this volume of space that we're looking at here. One of the nice things that I put in, a couple of things, is I colored the stars based on the colors that you would find for stars, which you just saw in M22, black body radiation, right? Going from that blue to that red, you don't see green stars. And then you can even turn on here trails. So if I turn on some trails, you'll be able to see the orbits of the stars as they are going around each other, which I find, I don't know, I think it's the coolest thing in the world. Not only that, but you can still change and look at the 3-dimensional. In fact, you can do something even cooler than this. You can turn on the auto rotate camera, and it'll sit there and kind of, well, zoom around for you so you can watch the thing as the stars are orbiting each other. I think that is just amazing. And the fact that I could do that last night before this presentation today, and I spent way too much time on it. I should have been practicing my presentation, but I think that's truly amazing. I do think that you need to give some thought about what this means, because this is definitely a change. There are going to be people today who think it's antiquated to actually have to process or to program rather and code stuff, to learn about the nitty gritty of it. It'll be a different way of coding, I guess, in the future. So I don't know what it means. I do know at one level that, let me just turn off the auto thing here. I know that at one level, at least for me, I don't think it's important that the pain of going through and understanding the syntax and making sure, that every semicolon is in the right space and what, I don't know, all of that stuff, and even some simple logic that, humans just get wrong, but computers just don't. That pain is unnecessary. I agree with that. I do wonder, though, about the fact that when I wrote my n-body code, and I could literally write the equations in code form for calculating the force, and then doing differential, basically a small step in, to calculate the acceleration, and then you calculate the velocity, and then ultimately you get a position. To see all of that in that form really gives you a feel not only for how it works, but it gives you the feel for more stuff. The genius of someone like Newton to understand what basically became calculus. That comes all from that. And I wonder if you still can get that same feeling if you just talk to a computer and you just tell it, give me the program that does it. Is this physics right? Can I write down, the numbers that it's calculating here and verify? No, I don't think I can do that. But what I can do is I do know something about physics. And one of the things that I know, I've seen a few people actually do this kind of simulation that you're seeing here. And I don't think they did it right. One of the things that you learn in physics is that gravity only works correctly in 3 dimensions. So if you just naively tell ChatGPT, please give me an n-body code, it very well likely could give you a 2-dimensional model, which doesn't work. It won't actually give you orbits like you're seeing here. So for anyone that wants to reproduce this, please remember to do it in 3 dimensions and not 2, and you'll probably get the right answer. So if you would like to play with all of my little settings here, if you'd like to play with this, you can. On my website at Atom Block Studios, if you go to my star clusters page, which is here, and then you navigate to M22, I embedded it here. Unfortunately, on my Weebly site, it gives you only a very narrow playground. So I just did this last night. I'm going to probably put it on my my Atom Block Studios page where it'll be a full screen, nice playground to work in. But if you can't wait and you want to play with it right now, you can just press the little bars here and you get out the controls, play with it, see what happens. I've already done some pretty cool things with it, but I'd encourage you to check it out. So I think that's really cool. I actually think this is one of the best n-body demonstrations for stars that I've seen rendered. I think that's amazing. That's professional quality right there.
Yeah, John says he wants that video as a screensaver.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, Scott's got 3 questions that he wants to ask, and I'm going to ask them in reverse order so that they'll be closest to when you were discussing them. This is akin to we're talking here about the n-body problem.
Oh.
The 3-body problem, which can't be calculated beyond a certain point.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, there's no question about
so
it.
let me. Oh, sorry, didn't need to see infinity there. Let me just maybe clarify that just a little bit. So you can calculate down to some, finite precision, almost to a precision where it doesn't matter, right? You can get to some precision, and then you're going to say it's almost as good as you can get, right? So it's not that it's not calculable. It's not calculable in the sense that you can't write down a single equation like X, Y, Z and get an answer, but you can you can iterate on a solution just by applying the laws of physics, and get an answer that is as precise as you basically want. Just as a cool little add-on, you'll notice that one of the things over here that I had to put in place that's very typical is you need to put in a some kind of, sorry, it's not that one. It is, does anyone see the softening thing?
You know, that's pretty much beyond even our high def. I can't read what's on the screen.
Yeah, okay. Well, you need to put in something that says when stars get, this has no collisions. So when stars get too close to one another, you can't have them, they don't collide. But you have a singularity because the forces go to infinity, which doesn't actually happen. So you actually put in a softening number, and that, of course, decreases the precision of the actual answer. But you need to do that computationally, or else you won't get you won't get a nice screen result.
Okay.
Yeah.
Scott's other question takes us back to ImageBlend script, and he says, could you tell us what you think the ImageBlend script will completely replace in PixInsight?
It doesn't replace anything; it augments it. This isn't a replacement.
Would
It
you
adds to the capability of PixInsight?
Well, you said, you know how we used to do it with LRGB combined?
That's augmenting. That doesn't replace that doesn't replace composition.
I got that, but from now on, when you need to put your L into your RGB picture,
yes,
what are you going to be using?
Yes, I'll use ImageBlend because I have that extra,
and in that
degree
sense,
of freedom.
Yeah, but we've still got LRGB combination. In that sense, it's not replacing it. Okay, and then we have to go all the way back to 709, where actually it was before that. Scott asked a question where you were talking about stars causing problems in your processing. And he says that he basically always removes the stars using Star Exterminator before doing any processing. And he shoots mainly narrowband, but also some monochrome RGB. Would you ever want to leave stars in while you're processing?
I didn't remove any stars on the globular star cluster.
Well, okay. And
I don't want to remove stars on a planetary nebula. Maybe that destroys some of the small features or details are there. Or maybe you need to do it carefully with a clever technique that I actually have on my site.
Okay.
Exclusive information.
Adam, you can stop sharing your screen if you want.
Oh, you don't want to see my thing anymore? Fine.
Oh no, we're fascinated. We're definitely going to go to your site and play with that.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about it.
Sure. Anyway, those were Scott's questions, Scott's questions.
Yeah.
And there are other comments and other people making, giving advice and stuff like that. But I don't think there are any other questions.
Okay, cool.
I think we're good. Oh, fantastic. I think everyone's going to be using ImageBlend. I haven't used LRGB combined for quite a while for obvious reasons.
I don't think that that's the star. That was just an example of something in PixInsight that, it can be now thought of differently. But there are these other things that you can do in ImageBlend, which just, they weren't even a possibility before that are now possible.
Yeah. You mentioned my name as someone that would be interested. I kind of was wondering what that meant. Was that just?
I seem to recall at the end of the last episode you had given it seemed like a negative comment about image blending in particular, and I think that that I was hoping to win you over here to show you that there's a greater spectrum of ways in which you can blend images, especially in PixInsight, that might have great utility.
I'm a Photoshop user though, right?
And really, we have to tell everybody that, after all 114 of you go away someplace and we're left, just talking among ourselves, these two guys will probably discuss the value of Photoshop versus PixInsight for a while.
Well, the more I can do in PixInsight, the better it is.
I always, at the beginning of these conversations, I always say the same thing. These are tools, not rules.
Yep.
Right? They're all tools.
Yep.
And can I add one thing to that, Eric? We need more of these 114 people that are out there, to actually join us in putting on this show, helping us recruit people, helping us do the technical part that Jaime, I think, is doing tonight. Or no, Molly's doing tonight. I forget. I've been told that 6 times tonight.
It's Jaime.
It's
I
Jaime.
think
Okay.
Jaime's running the show
Um,
tonight.
and now Linda has joined us in doing this. We need some people to do that kind of stuff. And if you do, you get to talk to Adam before and after the show too. So please contact us. Okay.
Okay. Fantastic presentation, Adam. I really enjoy it. And being a Photoshop user or not, I am definitely going to go in there and experiment with this and see what it can do for me. Tools, not rules. So if we're all set, are we all set? Jaime, you're running the show.
I am.
Okay. So everyone, please look at our schedule. Come back when we have a program. I guarantee that Alex will probably make some more faces and wave his hands. So that's always entertaining. And with that, I'll just say, we'll see you at the next program. Molly, do you have something to say?
I should say our next one is next week with Ron Brecher talking about masking tools.
Hey, can I put in a shameless plug for Adam Block coming out to Nightfall, October, 16th, 17th?
Yeah.
That's the next thing I need to put together.
I hope you do a good job there, Adam.
Okay.
You have to live up to my legacy now.
Okay.
All right, everyone, we're signing off. Good night or good morning, wherever you are, if you happen to be
Night.
somewhere else.
Good
Have a
night.
good night, you all.